and it is 10 a.m. And on Tuesday at 10 means it's time to track the tropics. From Central Florida, I'm WESH 2 meteorologist Eric Burris.
And in Savannah, Georgia, I'm WJCL 22 Chief Meteorologist Jeremy Nelson.
All right, so Jeremy, we did a whole bunch of these last week, of course, dealing with another ice storm impacting land. Now we've been able to get a little bit of sleep. My area got some stuff. Your area got some stuff. And now the tropics are recycling as we approach the peak of hurricane season. And we have, well, plenty to track out there. As a matter of fact, we're on the cusp of another system to develop.
Yeah, and what would this be now? Tropical Depression 13?
It would be 13.
Yeah, so 13, and then quickly on the heels of it, probably another system. So we'll get Lee and Margot developing probably this week. And then that little yellow that you see way up there by the banner, that would actually be if Franklin redevelops. It's been kind of a wild time here the last couple of weeks in the tropics because we had Emily, I believe, went away and then reformed. Gert went away for a long time, reformed. And potentially Franklin may make one last appearance.
That's right. So obviously we've got the two areas in red, both vying for the next slot, though I do think that it will be Invest 95 that ends up taking that title. There's a close look at Invest 95 on the satellite presentation. Good circulation, good convection, and as of this morning, the National Hurricane Center, Jeremy, upped their numbers and basically said, not only is there a 100% chance of development over the next 2 days' time, but to quote them, they said if current trends continue, advisories would be issued later today on a tropical cyclone.
Yeah, and that's why we're saying maybe at 11 a.m., 2 p.m., or 5 p.m., we could have tropical depression. And then we really think this will probably get going pretty quickly in the next couple of days.
Yeah. Take a look at the visible satellite imagery. Remember, the sun's just come up here, but this is in the central Atlantic. You can actually see the shadow of the sun on high noon there crossing, but definitely has that look. It's not a big bad hurricane yet, but it's definitely organizing, getting better set up. And, to me, I would fully expect there to be a tropical depression upgraded a little bit later on today.
Yeah, and you're looking at that visible satellite. So that's like if you're a couple miles up off the ground or more, and you're just kind of looking down and you take a photo, that's what you're seeing right now. So the IR satellites that we show, the colorful ones, those are measuring cloud tops, and the kind of the red colors are typically the colder thunderstorm tops. There you go. And then the kind of the white, gray, the green, that's a little cooler cloud top and generally a lower cloud top. So the more red that you see with a tropical system on this type of satellite, you're looking at likely more thunderstorms.
Yeah, so it's bubbling up convection. And, to be honest, there's been you've been posting a lot on your social channels about it. I've been posting a lot on my social channels about it. The kind of forward momentum of this storm system is going to come down to several big players down the line. But one of them is how quickly does this try to develop? Because the quicker it develops, the better the computer models will have an understanding of it, but weaker systems like to go west. So if it were to try and strengthen fairly quickly, Jeremy, that would make us feel better about a recurvature coming down the line.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about down the line is does it start going from westerly, northwesterly, then kind of northwest, and eventually start pulling more to the north. And right now, that's what a lot of models have. That would be great news for everyone except Bermuda, very likely. But definitely, if we're keeping a major hurricane away from the U.S. coastline, that is what we want.
Certainly is, yeah. So this is a look at the intensity models that we're running, and very clearly you can tell most of these models are wanting to bring this to major hurricane status by late in the week, right? By like Saturday, Sunday, you're looking at the orange shades, and the models are basically leveling it as Cat 3 and Cat 4. So the computer models, Jeremy, very much want to make this a big, bad hurricane, but the quicker that happens, the higher our confidence would be of a recurvature. And that certainly is something that, as you mentioned, we would like to see. Now, a lot of people have been asking for the timeline of this. And it's also important, and I know that you posted this graphic to your social. Yeah. I know that I posted this graphic to my social. But we've got a lot of time to track this storm system because of just its sheer location in the overall basin.
Yeah, and what you're looking at there is that normal times to reach the U.S. coastline if and only if they moved in that direction. So what you're looking at there right now, I believe that's close to like 8 to 10, maybe 8 to 11 days,
Yeah.
somewhere in there. Today
Yep.
we're on the 5th. So really it looks like maybe towards the end of week 2 of September if it was to continue going to the west. But again, a lot of the models right now, we haven't really picked one out that is moving due west towards, say, Florida. So, perfect world, it just stays out to sea.
Yeah, and you know I always struggle with systems like this in messaging, Jeremy, and I know that you do too, right? Because the whole thing is, it's like, yeah, all of the computer models, and it's true, all of them are wanting to keep it out to sea, but we have also learned lessons over the years, which is, it ain't over until it's over. And the one storm that really comes to mind when it comes to that is Irma. All the models at this phase were like, yep, gonna stay out to sea. And obviously, my community, your community, we remember Irma did not do that.
Yeah, and that was a major hurricane, and it was a really expansive wind field when it came to tropical storm conditions. And then obviously closer in to the low, it had hurricane force winds. But yeah, that's Irma from 2017, quickly coming up on the 6-year anniversary of that.
Right.
9 days out, and Eric and I both posted this yesterday. The ensembles, which is basically all the spaghetti plots, pretty much. All the different tracks from different models and everything kept it way out to sea, basically. And the track ended up south of every single one of those 9-day forecast tracks.
Right. Now, one thing that I want to show, and I knew that this was going to be a topic of discussion today. So I went and I found some data for us, okay? So this is something that we've not really shown much, but this is, and you know, before, we'll even get to that in a second, but so let's just look at the computer models. These are the tropical models that we're used to, and obviously, you know, the good news there, stand by a second. The good news is that they're all pretty much in agreement of a recurvature at the moment. Let's look at the trends, okay? And that's one of those things that will really help for comparison. So what you're looking at is the GFS, the operational GFS. Obviously, lighter colors here indicate the older model runs. Darker colors are the newer model runs. And you can see the lighter colors are further west. The darker colors are further east. Further away from Florida and perhaps the southeastern United States recurvature. So that's the GFS. Again, trending a little further away. The European, not really making many big changes. The UK Met, pretty tightly packed. And the Canadian, kind of on that right side. So, you know, to me, Jeremy, we don't have a huge swing in models, but we're also still in the genesis phase of this. It has not developed. And because of that, computer models are only so good. And again, this is not hype, right? Like, this is just making sure everybody understands how these things work.
Yeah, and all we're doing is also showing past storms. It's hard to compare one to another because they're all definitely different. But when we do the comparison, it's to show that, hey, there's been times in the past, recent memory here, where you get something that, okay, the models, yes, it's going to be a major hurricane, and then they steer it away. Well, if you look back just 6 years ago, we had something similar, just in the sense it was out in the main development region it formed. Models were tracking it off the east coast of the U.S., and then it trended west, 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 and south, and then it eventually brushed by Cuba. Did it officially hit Key West? I know they had significant impacts.
It was near. It didn't officially hit Key West. If here, I'll zoom in the graphic. I mean, it
had significant storm surge there.
Yeah. I mean, it went very near Key West.
Okay. Yeah, and then it scooted up the west side of Florida, where initially none of those tracks were anything remotely like that. So things can change, hopefully now, and I did mention computer modeling. It may not seem like it, but it has gotten better over the last 6 years, and hopefully those little minor changes in some of the models will give us a more consistent outcome this time.
Yeah, so let's do this then, Jeremy. So let's take a look at those raw computer model data and just kind of look at the GFS, the Euro, the Canadian, and the Ensemble plots, okay? And let's just kind of get an idea of what we're seeing at the moment, okay? And so this is the raw GFS, and if you're unfamiliar, if you're new to the Tracking the Tropics broadcast that we do, essentially, we try to go into a deep dive and really get you the most analytical view possible, okay? So this is the 6Z GFS, the most recent one we have, and rolling through time, safely keeping it off of our east coast of the United States, whether it be along the Carolina, Georgia coastline or the Florida coastline. The GFS model, by the way, right in this image, has it as a hurricane with winds of 127 miles an hour, okay? So there's the center of circulation. If I go back one model run, it's a little further out. If I go back 2 model runs, it's a little closer. If I go back 3 model runs, it's a little further out. If I go back 4 model runs, it's a bit closer. So what we're seeing, at least in the GFS, is a pretty good consistency there, that it'll pass close to Bermuda, but not necessarily close to the United States. And to me, Jeremy, I mean, that's a good sign based on one model and several model runs.
Yeah, and I think really like what you said earlier about this is not even technically, it's not even a tropical depression yet. It's not even a storm yet. It's an invest. So it's just a investigatable area of low pressure that we're monitoring right now. Probably going to be a tropical depression today, maybe a named storm within the next 24 to 36 hours. And then I think our first test coming up, obviously, we'll see what the models trend, but how close does it get to the Leeward Islands? Because every model right now is north of there. If somehow it's south and near the Leeward Islands, then I think the track officially then probably has shifted a bit south or west.
And that's 100% based on some other players when it comes to steering, right? Positions of highs and lows, and we definitely need to look into that. But let's continue on our computer models, and let's look at the European model, all right? This is the 0Z run of the of the European. And I got to tell you, first off, the European is absolutely going bonkers, Jeremy, with intensity. What you're looking at there, according to the European, that's 2 a.m. September 11th. So that's 2 a.m. on Monday. That shows it as a 180 mile per hour hurricane. That's a huge difference between the European and the GFS.
Right. I think both of them eventually would have a major hurricane. But yeah, to say it's a Category 5 hurricane, that is kind of rare air that we're dealing with. And certainly we've had Cat 5 hurricanes blow up over the open waters before, but that definitely is a bit of a model difference there. And what was the pressure when Idalia made landfall? Because remember, we talked about that. Some models had it getting down to like 926. I don't think it quite got there. Was it around 940 or so?
I'm just recovering from sleep.
I thought it was around like 940, let's say 940 to 946.
That kind of rings a bell.
So the models, again, there were some that had that storm getting a little too deep or the pressure a little too low. So this definitely could be overdoing this a bit. But whether it's Category 3, 5, whatever, major hurricane out there, it's something we'll have to watch closely.
Right. So the European and the GFS, thankfully, are keeping this well out east of us. Let's take a look at the Canadian model, and there again, the Canadian model intensifying it, but not as strong. Interestingly enough, that's 86 miles per hour on the Canadian model, and then kind of lifting to the north. So the operational models, as it stands, all of the kind of deterministic operational models, keeping it way out and have for run and run and run and run. Consistency breeds confidence, and I'm liking that. Let's hope that continues, right?
Yeah, that definitely would be a good trend here. So, some questions coming in, and maybe we can take a look at the ensembles if you have those.
Absolutely, I'm already dialed. You want to do questions? You want to get to the ensembles?
Well, one that I want to address here, because I know you brought up before just saying we're not here to hype, and someone was saying, to the listener, it feels like we're walking the fine line of hyping, also saying Mother Nature ultimately decides. So I guess people can take away what they want. We're not hyping. We're saying a major hurricane is likely to develop. And right now here, if we had to put percentages on everything, the highest percent would be probably for it to track more on that curve based on everything we're looking at.
Yep.
But there's also chances that with how far we are out, and since it's not even a developed storm, we can't say, okay, 100% it will be taking this track. I'm not willing to do that, and I know you're not either.
Oh, for sure. And regarding the hype thing, like, listen, we don't make the intensity models. There's the intensity models. The computers are dialing this up to be a major hurricane. I do think that at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is to be good stewards of the information, because we know that you can get computer model data online, and a lot of people do. And I will help you get the computer model data. But what I want to do is I want to make sure you understand how to interpret it from an expert position, Jeremy, right? Like I've tracked the tropics in my career's over 20 years of forecasting in Florida. And so I think that we all are understanding that models are good. They ain't great. Like experience dictates, like looking at Irma, looking at any of these other storms, like this far out, computer models are good. They ain't great.
Right. And we're still, I think it's also maybe a blessing and a curse. I think forecasting has gotten to a point where it's so good we can give an advance heads up. Obviously, we do some other methodology where we're giving maybe months or weeks heads up. So are people becoming maybe a little bit spoiled with the technology and expecting more than what it can deliver at this point? I don't know. And obviously, I always say you can go, we'll judge how things play out after the storm actually happens, and we know what it was. Like if you go back to Idalia, I think our forecasting with that was very accurate with that, days out, months out with our forecast. So when it comes to this one, let's see how things play out. Right now, we're sort of just monitoring all the trends, all the forecasts. And I love what Eric did. He's trying to show you with different models, are they shifting a bit north, south, staying on track? So we're just trying to give you the information that we have and put it into terms that is not trying to make anyone worry.
Right.
Just trying to keep you up to date, give you the time frames that you really want to be watching. And right now that's late in week 2 of September. So I would say next Tuesday at this time, a week down the road, we're probably going to have maybe some sort of hurricane, major hurricane that we're tracking. And hopefully at that point, we're like, hey, this is safely going to miss our coast.
By the way, just got a notification. Looks like TD13 has formed. Just looking at the database now, they've not officially spun it up, but in the database, they've made a change. So they've made it from a database invest to a database low. This is talking super in the weeds, right? But what it means for us is that I'm thinking that at 11 a.m. we're going to have
and they just tweeted out. It says National Hurricane Center will initiate advisories on Tropical Depression 13 located over the central tropical Atlantic at 11 a.m. I believe 11 a.m. Eastern our time.
Yep. So all right. So cool. When Jeremy and I were chatting before we came on here, I was saying like I'll know pretty quickly, and it looks like they made that database change right as they must have sent out that X or whatever you call it now.
Yeah, so now one thing, once we get a depression here coming up at the top of the hour, then the National Hurricane Center has their forecast cone on this.
Yep.
And everyone, it will be clear as day, whatever the meteorologists, the experts at the Hurricane Center are thinking.
Yeah.
So you can compare their track, and then we'll look at all the model data, and we'll start to see if any shifts start to occur. I'm guessing their tracks initially is just going to be going kind of west-northwest.
Yeah, and the models have been, and I'll pop those back up. The models have been tightly aligned in that, showing that forecast, right? So we know that that's the initial data. Afterward is the big question. Now, I do want to get back to the Ensemble data because, Jeremy, of course, that gives us kind of an idea of what goes on inside. And if you're new to this, certainly we'll try to explain it. So what you're looking at is the GFS, but this is the Ensemble. So all those little L's you're seeing, and there's different ways to visualize it as different blobs or as one blob with a bunch of L's. But this is kind of the idea of where 50 different versions of the GFS show it. And again, they're just about all recurving. But notice there's a couple of outliers that are bringing it toward land. That's different. The earlier runs did not have that. I'm glad that there's only a couple of them that are bringing it closer. But notice that that's the case, right? This is the 6Z ensembles.
Is that GFS?
This is GFS. If I go to 0Z, you don't see that. You see something kind of one member bringing something out of the Caribbean. But, so that's a little bit of a change. And in computer modeling and in tracking the tropics, you're looking for trends. You're looking for those changes. And so this is the 18Z. I'll go to yesterday's 12Z. Everything's out to sea. And then, bringing a rogue thing through the Caribbean. But, that 6Z run, that's something. And it's not huge. And again, this isn't hyping. I'm just saying, watching these trends, it's just, you got to watch. It's a marathon, not a sprint. You got to watch these subtle hints.
Yes. And I think you said that best, because that was a reference I had, a reply to a comment yesterday. 7 days or more out when you're forecasting the tropics, something that right now is nothing, about to be a depression, not even a tropical storm or a hurricane yet. That is it is a true marathon across the Atlantic. All the way from a tropical wave off the west coast of Africa to a developing system in the main development region, still days away from any islands. And again, we're talking more like the middle part of probably next week. Right. So this is a journey that we don't know the end of it yet. And again, hopefully it's something that does miss the U.S. coast.
Yeah, and that's great. And just like what you had said earlier, I think that's such an important thing. We have gotten to a point where we expect to know days and days and days out. And I just remember, I think back, and this is going back a long way, Jeremy, right? But Hurricane Andrew, 2 days ahead of time, they were like, oh, crud, it's happening. That's 2 days time. Now, 2 days out, 3 days out, we have hurricane watches being posted. 4 or 5 days out, we have a pretty good idea. But here we are, 7 days out, there's still a lot of questions. And so we have to hedge expectations. We know what we know what we don't know. And we also know that there's, in tropical meteorology, a massive gray area beyond that 7-day window.
Right. But the good news right now, a lot of things are trending that way. So you got the European dialed up?
Yep. So this is the European 12Z ensemble. And again, there's a couple of those ensemble players that are kind of spewing away from the recurvature. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but we need to watch the trend. If we go back from the 0Z to the 12Z, that wasn't really the case. So could it be just some subtle outliers? I certainly hope so. But
which of those was the most recent? Just so
this is the most recent, showing more. Showing several of the members kind of sneaking away just a little bit.
Okay, and that's probably for people watching all in relation to maybe how weak it has the trough over the east and how maybe quickly it tries to build a high back over the top.
I'm going to dial that up. So now we're getting nerdy, people, okay? We're going to get to upper air heights, and we're going to go to some anomaly data. Give me a few seconds to dial this up.
So if you have a high over the tropical system, that can act as a lid, and it won't be able to move into it. And then if you can release the lid or slide it to the edge, you can kind of sneak out.
Yeah. All right. So here's North America. All right. So what are we talking about here? I'm going to dial this up, and I'm going to turn off that little box in the corner. So let's just back this up a little bit. So very bottom right corner of your screen, you see the orange. That's the Bermuda High. Right? We all know what that is. But on the left, or the center of your screen, just north of Florida, kind of right over the mountains there's a little storm system, Jeremy, a little upper level low, a little trough there.
Yes. And that's a real key to the forecast, because what that would do is sort of pick up or help guide that system and keep it away from the coast. So if the trough is weaker or farther northwest, it would allow the system to get closer to the U.S. and potentially allow that high to kind of slide on top of it. So there's still some variables out there. I would say if this is a tropical depression or storm here very soon, I think we're going to start getting some Hurricane Hunter missions out there just to get some real-time data.
Yeah. Yeah, if nothing else, I would imagine, it's still so far out, right? That even out of St. Croix, maybe not today. I mean, that's not in the plan, but like, even if they
Right.
could just get the high altitude jet to start surveilling the atmosphere ahead of it and plugging that data into the models, that would be a huge benefit.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be a good thing. So I know it's been so active here recently. The storms have piled up. Do you have our kind of the season count?
Sure do. Give me 2 seconds if you wanna take it and roll with it. Be my guest, my friend.
Okay, let's see what graphic we have up here. So far, 12 named storms. Lee, which we expect soon, the one we've been talking a lot about, will be 13. Behind it, Margot is likely to form, which would be 14. And then we're already at an average hurricane season. 14 named storms is average. Average named storms to this point, I believe, is that 7 through around today's date?
Yeah. Oh, named storms? Yes,
Or
7.
the average?
Yes, average named storms through today is 7.2. Last year through today we had 5.
Okay, so it's definitely been active out there. We don't see that stopping here anytime soon. Probably another week and a half, at least 2 weeks of quite a bit of activity. Some models even continue it all the way through September.
Yeah.
Taking a look here. Let's see here. I'll let you take this one.
Days.
Okay.
Uber nerdy, right? So 44 storm name days. The average through today is 29. Last year we'd had 11. And for those nerds that love ACE, here's your helpful place, Jeremy.
Yeah, accumulated cyclone energy. And if we get a major hurricane or a storm that is lengthy in duration,
Yeah.
I think that Lee has the potential to probably get an ACE score close to Franklin or even top that.
Yeah.
Which was like 20, was it 23, 26, somewhere in there, I think is the accumulated number for Franklin.
Sounds right. Yep, sounds
And
about
then
right.
I think Idalia, since that was somewhat short-lived, even though it was a major hurricane, was like 7.6. So that gives you an idea. The longer a storm is a hurricane, more days, it starts to accumulate more sort of that higher number.
Yep. So there you go, people. So we don't have anything threatening at least land at this moment, thankfully, but we've got plenty to track. So I think at this point, Jeremy, let's take some questions and make sure everybody knows what's going on as we are waiting for the, and we're not going to stay on the whole time, but as we're waiting for the advisory on what will become Tropical Depression 13.
Yeah. Let's see here. If you have a question ready to go, a lot of people just kind of thanking us for some of our updates.
Yeah. So April's asking what happens. No, go ahead.
No, it was just people thanking us about keeping them updated, this storm, other storms. And remember, this isn't something new. As Eric mentioned, when we started, we talk every single week. We track the tropics at 10 a.m.
Yeah. Every week. And you can also find us on all your favorite podcasting platforms as well for, if you do that sort of thing. A couple of people are asking, like, where is El Nino? And that goes back to something, Jeremy, that we were talking about months and months and months and months ago.
Yeah. So when we created our forecast and posted it March the 1st, we were sort of knew that there was maybe an El Nino headwind or a lot of chatter about it. But when we went back and looked at what we used to make our forecast, we were like, wow, there was a lot of activity in the Atlantic. And one thing we really noted was just sort of the open Atlantic.
Yeah.
That there was just lots of waves out there. And we translate that to maybe a busier season. So our hurricane forecast, at least the one that we put out March the 1st compared to preseason ones, was higher than everyone. Others have since caught up or maybe even gone slightly above ours, but we had 14 to 18 named storms. We're about to be there. We'll see how things play out, but I don't think El Nino has slowed this year down, and actually things continue to ramp up.
Yeah, which it will be something that we're going to have to keep tracking. Mike's asking, why won't the Hurricane Center investigate with the hurricane hunters to learn the atmospheric conditions ahead of the storm? That information would be priceless. I mean, they're putting together plans, and certainly they're planning on investigating this. It's way out there, and you have to remember, you've got an aircraft with only so much fuel and only so much time in a storm. So they have to balance immediate threat to land versus safety for crew versus fuel versus time in station. So at this point, they don't need to, right? There's still enough time from land that it's not a big threat for immediate loss of life or property. And I think that's the mission statement that the Hurricane Center and all of NOAA uses.
Yeah, I think the main one is it's so far out right now. It's an invest, and they know we have days and days yet to sort of get the track down. The models overall have been fairly consistent. I think if this was pointed directly at maybe the Leeward Islands, which maybe it will be yet, we don't quite know.
Right.
For the most part, it scoots a little north of there. They'll start kind of accelerating some of their missions, but they'll very likely at least one of those aircraft will start going out soon.
No doubt. And then the other thing too, like they have to position aircraft and resources. I'm just looking to see plan of the day. Okay, so just so that you know, the plan of the day for the next day is investigating AL-95. So it's in there, but they have to move resources around. You know, they were just tracking storms in the Gulf, and so they have to now move crews to St. Croix. You know, there's a lot that goes into this. One more thing, Jeremy, real quick. I've had a few people asking about the A-Bear box. Are you familiar with the A-Bear box?
It sounds familiar.
Okay, no. And I don't mean to like put you on the spot. This is just one of those nerd things. Okay, so the A-Bear box, named for a former forecaster at the Hurricane Center, and he drew these boxes, and essentially the idea was most of the major hurricanes that cross these boxes go to Florida. And again, this would be something if you were a Florida chief meteorologist, you'd know about. But you're not, so it's okay. So, not to call you out on a negative way, of course. So let's just look at the A-Bear box, just so that you know. Okay, so this is the storm system. Okay, here's the computer models. Okay, most of them keeping it out of the A-Bear box. Okay, but if it were to sneak through as a major hurricane, that's when Florida really would have to worry. But like Charlie, Francis, Wilma, Irma, those storms all move through the A-Bear box. So that's just one of those weird things. Hopefully we keep it out of that box. It's just, it gets into nerddom, I know. But it's kind of interesting. And if you go and you look it up, he wrote a paper on it and this whole 9 yards.
I think, did Irma sort of cross that, I believe?
It did, yeah. Irma absolutely did, yeah. And that was like the moment, and the people in Florida follow this thing so closely that like as soon as it was in the A-Bear box, it's like, now we have to prepare. You know, like that was the moment where I think everybody realized, okay, we're hosed.
Okay, question here. Does the churning of the ocean water from previous storms make the ocean cooler and affect the direction of the new storms?
I mean, those water temperatures, you know, let me just, I'll pop it up here, Jeremy, and show you. I mean, these water temperatures in this area, remember, you need 80 degrees for tropical development. And we very much have, this is kind of that pathway ahead, 84, 85, 86 degrees. We haven't really gotten a major hurricane in this area. Not that it is, but we haven't had a major hurricane in this area churning things up. And even the Gulf of Mexico, where Idalia was located, those water temperatures, you know, they came down a little bit, but you're still like 85, 86, 87 out there.
Yeah, it's definitely warm, and that part of the Atlantic really has not had anything to churn it up recently, so really no impact from any type of cooler water or benefit from passing over that. There's just none there.
Yeah. All right. So Mickey over on YouTube is asking an interesting question. Does knowing the Nicole recycle raise any level of concern?
So, I mean, we've been talking about this, and so we can discuss this, I guess, right now, that we picked out that part of the pattern in November. Obviously, this has piqued our interest highly because it is within that date range that we set. Really, the cycle that we've noticed this year, probably 49 to 52, maybe 52 and a half days. But if you take 52 or 52 and a half and run it forward from November the 10th, and remember, this is our sort of forecasting tool that we use, long range, one of them. That would put things though closer to like September 18th or so.
Right.
So after this, now if it's more like 50-51, that's probably that front end of our range. And then we had like September 4th, 8th to 14th. So also Nicole was originated east of the Bahamas, and the storm, we'll see how close it gets to that area. But what we like to say is definitely once this is complete, I think we'll have a very good idea of, oh, this wasn't a cold part of the pattern, or nope, it's actually coming more like 16 to 18, something like that, because still a potential that maybe there's a low that's underneath this one. Once this one, if this one would head to Bermuda, quickly move away, then that high would move in. And what's the saying, like high over troubled waters or something like that?
Yes, that's the saying, yeah.
You get the high on top, and then you can get a protected environment under it for tropical systems to form. So I think really in the next week and a half, 2 weeks, it'll be clear what happens here.
Yeah, it's just, when we get into this mode of forecast, like we put our hurricane forecast out, and then when we get around those dates, we know that there's a concern, but we aren't going to sit there and be like, that's it, bada bing. Like, that's just not the way that we're doing it, right? Like, we're watching this, we're going to show you the data. We know that the pattern is favorable in this window of something nearby. Obviously, that's what's playing out, whether this hits or not, So it's just another like red flag to go up, and we have to watch it. But at the end of the day, in the next few minutes' time, we're going to have a new system. So we're going to have to watch and see how that plays out. So that's all I've got, Jeremy. You got anything else, sir?
Yeah. So back on March the 1st, obviously we pinpointed that northeastern Gulf of Mexico near the Florida coast. August 30th into the start of September, we had that tropical system there. So now we're into more of that kind of the middle part of September. Watch what happens there. And I think by the next time we talk next Tuesday, we'll know this track, and then we will have a very good idea if, say, this one pulls hard to the north, if something is going to sneak in maybe down farther to the south. Right. So there's a couple parts to this. Okay, great. This one moves away fast, misses us. But then is that going to set the stage for something else to develop? Lots of variables. I think our focus here in the short term through next week will just be on this for the most part.
Yeah. Yes. And so let's just do that. And if we need to do an additional Tracking the Tropics broadcast, Jeremy, I know that I clear your calendar and you clear my calendar. So if we need to be here to do more updates, and as this approaches land, I would imagine that we're going to probably be doing just that.
Yeah, and one quick question. I think you hit it a little bit. Charlotte asked, where do they fly out of? I know you're more in tune with some of the hurricane hunter stuff.
Yeah, so they fly in for a storm like this. They're going to probably go to St. Croix. There's great resources there for fueling, for logistical support, so that they can put. It's not just like one guy that's sitting there like chill style flying an airplane. There's a whole crew. And in order to have kind of multiple crews, you have to have places for them to stay. You need to have tons of fuel, et cetera, et cetera. So St. Croix is a great resource for them. So if you just kind of figure the distance from St. Croix to this storm system for fuel, et cetera, tomorrow, the next day, we're going to start recon missions. It's just not going to be this moment in time.
Yeah, and I assume they have a limit. They can maybe fly 8, 10, 12 hours, then they have to have a certain amount of rest and then fly.
Well, and they don't want to go. Listen, I mean, with fueling, they could go get in the storm for like 10 minutes and go back. But that's not, that's a waste. They want to be able to get on station for a while, do several passes, because it's not just going and, looking at the wind. It's going and then going again and zigzagging through, so that not only are you getting a look inside the storm, but you're watching from, minute to minute to minute and watching, is it bubbling or is the pressure lowering? How's the core adjusting? That sort of thing.
Okay. Yeah. So Charlotte, she said, thank you for answering the question about where they depart from. Yeah. So yeah, we're probably minutes away from a tropical depression. I guess that's probably a good tease ahead to, if you're in Florida, watch Eric. If you're up here, tune me in later today, and we'll have all the details on the tropical depression. And maybe in the next day, it's our next named storm.
Yeah, we're both working the chief. I mean, you're the chief, But I'm gonna be working the chief shift tonight, so I'm gonna put on my Tony Manolfi cape and try and do the best I can. He's our
So he's
chief.
actually going to get some time off. Wasn't he supposed to be off during
He was.
Idalia and then?
He was,
Okay.
yeah. He was supposed to have last week off, so he's taking a couple of days this week. He may be back tomorrow. We'll figure it out. Yeah. So we're just doing our thing. So yep, I could tell you as soon as that advisory comes out, I'll be posting it to the social channels, and I'm sure you will as well, Jeremy.
Yes, and we'll have the first look at the National Hurricane Center's forecast cone, which we think will probably be like westerly, west northwest, something like that. And then with their cone, though, you're not going to start to see that huge turn to the north quite yet because we're not far enough out.
Right. And I don't know when we'll do another one of these tracking the tropics, but I have a feeling we're going to add at least one more this week. But Jeremy, you and I could chat about it and figure it out.
Yeah. If people want that, always let us know in the comments. And then before we wrap things up, let people know where they can find this. Because at one point, and I think we still were like the number 2 tropical related podcast out there.
I'll take it. So Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music. I post the podcast immediately following our Tracking the Tropics update. So we'll be here for you for the duration of hurricane season. We're always going to be here to help control the hype and to give sense to the chaos of computer model data and weather dynamics. We want to make sure to make it all easy and clear to understand.
Yes. All right. I'll wrap things up here from Savannah. I'm WJCL 22 Chief Meteorologist Jeremy Nelson.
And from Central Florida, I'm WESH 2 Meteorologist Eric Burris. Thank you all for hanging out with us. We'll see you again in a couple days.